Sorry about that, everyone. We're here now, and thank you for attending, and welcome to the ForecastRx webinar for the importance of inventory forecasting for Amazon sellers. My name is Parker. For those of you who have trialed the application or used the application before, you probably have heard from me. I'm in charge of some of the sales and customer experience stuff here. To my right is my colleague Brendan, who is our data analytics director. He's got a wide range of knowledge and background in statistics and statistical analysis, and so he's worked with some other people in the industry, some statisticians in the industry that also have they've worked together to build knowledge in inventory forecasting and apply the knowledge and statistics to strictly inventory forecasting. And then on my left is our special guest, Craig, the co-founder and general manager of Fisher's Finery, which is a private label seller on Amazon. They've been around for just short of 5 years. They've received a number of awards. They've grown at a rapid rate since inception, just only a short 5 years ago. And he's going to share a bunch of his knowledge and how crucial of a role inventory forecasting has played in the growth of Fisher's Finery and the success of launching new products, keeping products in stock, keeping those listings going. You name it, we're gonna talk about it today. And so I'm going to start by just tossing it over to Brendan. He's going to share some of his knowledge in inventory forecasting and just kind of give a brief introduction into that.
For those who don't know me, I'm Brendan. I'm the director of data analytics here at ForecastRx. Been with ForecastRx now for about 2.5 years. I came from the field of econometrics and statistics, and obviously where I went with that was inventory management and forecasting. So have quite a bit of experience in that area. And let's talk about how inventory forecasting can benefit Amazon sellers, and just a little bit about what inventory forecasting is. The premise of inventory forecasting is keeping enough in stock to meet all of the demand that your customers generate, while also not having too much stock to where you're tying up excess capital there and your business just isn't viable, and obviously optimizing your profitability. That's why it's important. We'll get into a little bit more of the practical side of that. And just to start that off, I'll toss it over to Craig here to tell us a little bit about a real world example and just a little bit about his business, and then we can talk about how inventory forecasting benefited them.
Sure, thanks Brendan, and thanks Parker. It's great to be part of your webinar here. We've been using the ForecastRx product for, I think going on 3 years now, so it's a pretty familiar process for us. Just to give you a little background on Fisher's Finery, we founded as a private brand. We design, manufacture, import our own products. We distribute and sell our products primarily on Amazon. Our website is powered by Shopify. In Amazon, we're a high volume seller, been invited to multiple conferences. We're also a hybrid seller, selling on both Seller Central and Vendor Central, which created even more complexity with managing inventory. And in the Shopify world, we're a top 2% retailer on that platform. It's been a wonderful journey and an outstanding experience. As we move through the process of where we've gone and how we've gotten there, we'll continue to leverage the points in which ForecastRx was just so important and critical into our growth.
Yes, thank you again for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Now that you kind of started with where Fisher's Finery is now and how you've gotten to this point, if you wouldn't mind just starting by sharing some of your growing pains and how initially you started off trying to forecast on your own, and you started right before the busy season. You launched in November of 2013, so that was right before Christmas. It's tough to predict demand right before a peak time of demand like that. But can you just share some of the growing pains and how you came to the conclusion that really you will need an inventory forecasting solution in the future?
Sure. I'm going to ask for your help on me staying on task because that's a big, broad question. So as you mentioned, we went live November 4th, 2013. We had identified the products that we were going to design, manufacture. We were late to market, considerably late. November 4th is awful close to Christmas. So we did about $300,000 in revenue during that period, that first Christmas selling season. At that point, our web store was powered by Amazon Web Store, which is no longer a product that they offer. and we were 100% Amazon-centric. As you can imagine, being so close to the peak holiday selling season, we ran out of the fastest turning products pretty quickly, reordered as fast as we could. Chinese New Year got in the way with manufacturing and importing products. And so by the time the second PO was issued and the products that were selling the fastest landed in the US, got into Amazon, FBA, and brought back on stock, the slower selling stuff had now gone out of stock, and we were on the hamster wheel of continually trying to catch up and manage inventory, ordering ever larger quantities with little or no quality data as to what the sales velocity was based on the growth of our company. During that first year of 2014, our first full calendar year, we grew at about, I don't even know how you calculate it, we did about 2 million. And we continued to struggle during that period to stay in stock. And as we went from a catalog of 300 SKUs,
Hi everyone, sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulties, but we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. And so where we were, I think we understand the importance of staying in stock from an Amazon perspective. We know how crucially important it is and how quickly being out of stock for a month can really, really affect your bottom line and really your revenue at the end of the year. So it is crucial that you make sure you have some software helping you to make sure that that stays in stock. And so, Brent, if you wouldn't mind starting and sharing some of the knowledge you have and talk about how you've worked with Craig in the past and gotten stuff going with him in forecasting.
Sure. I would say that starting from the beginning of working with Craig and Fisher's Finery, ForecastRx at that point was still a pretty young company, and we've made a lot of improvements and advancements in our forecasting since then. A lot due to just the way that the way forecasting and statistics and statistical analysis has progressed in that period of time, where we went from a few kind of more rudimentary algorithms on the statistics side to then now we're into machine learning and some artificial intelligence as well in that demand forecasting, which of course leads to the purchasing recommendations that we're able to make. I just along our progress, I was wondering, Craig, if you could tell us a little bit about your progression as well, in terms of, how did your process start, and then with the introduction of ForecastRx, kind of where that went to. But I guess primarily tell us, before this awakening of an inventory forecasting solution, as I'm sure a lot of the people out there are, using Excel, using maybe Amazon's own inventory tools there, like Seller Coach. Kind of tell us your process and kind of how it evolved would definitely be helpful.
Sure. So at that time, our catalog was increasing at a very rapid rate with new introductions to SKUs. So that's at that time, it was kind of a best guess scenario. So if we can come back and touch on that wonderful product or function inside the product that allows you to copy history book. So we had built spreadsheets that captured daily, weekly, monthly sales. I also tracked sessions and page views and conversions as order conversions and item conversion rates, and tried to build regression algorithms that would pick up on growth trends. We did that in Excel, monster spreadsheet with if-then loops and all sorts of background formulas running. I mean, to the point where I literally had to shut everything else down on my desktop so I didn't crash the system. And it did a great job of projecting flat growth. Really what it came down to, as much as we tried to do predictive analytics, it just can't be accomplished that we could figure out inside Excel. And so what happened was we would stay in stock on everything that wasn't experiencing rapid growth, and we would consistently go out of stock on the stuff that was growing the fastest. And the biggest issue for anyone who sells on Amazon, as we all know, is that in our world, we're primarily fashion and some home goods with our soap pillowcases. So almost all our products are parent with children variants. And if the fastest selling child variant goes out of stock, you lose the contribution of that child to the listing. you can go from on Tuesday morning being the 9th best-selling silk pillowcase, and by Friday, because you're out of stock, you could disappear and not even be in the top 100, which then the sales for every other child crash because your visibility's gone. And so during that period, even though we were growing rapidly and approaching the 4 million revenue mark at the completion of our second year, the strain that lack of proper inventory forecasting and demand forecasting was placing was causing depressed profit, because we were literally bringing 30% of all our inbound shipments from our manufacturers were having to come by air to try to limit the out-of-stock periods.
And then that'll definitely happen when you go from 300 SKUs to 800 SKUs in just your second year. Not even necessarily all of them were new products. A lot of it was child variants, like you mentioned, and so it was keeping things relatively consistent and really just using demand that you already had. But still, it's just it is difficult to do with just a spreadsheet.
I had hair before we started. Okay.
Wanted to go back to something you mentioned there, and again on those flatter demand curve products. And again, those are in our world, at least in statistics, those are a lot easier. Even in, like you mentioned, growing it, if I'm growing 25% year over year on every single item, that's a relatively easy thing to do in Excel with a couple basic arithmetic formulas. And you could do very well with that, and you'd probably stay in stock. However, as you know and experience, and as we see all the time with our customers' data, that's not really the way that the real world works. We're seeing a lot of seasonal demand patterns, different micro and macro growth trends within, let alone like one parent group of product, let alone, each child. I know that we were talking before the webinar here about different colors of pillowcases or something like that, where different seasons have different demand patterns even within the same product group. So something, when you get into that level and have, I think, what are you up to now, about 2,000 different SKUs?
Yeah, we're at 2,400 SKUs with another 500 or 600 coming live before Christmas. Just something you touched on is critically important to, sometimes I forget because we've traveled the journey and I live it every day, but during those times when you're relatively new or growing on Amazon, and it's hard to pay attention to every detail, so oftentimes we miss some really important micro trends. Then, the introduction of Prime Day, and so that sucks a bunch of your inventory out, and then you go dark, and you would have sold the stuff anyway, so it's not like you made more money if you didn't have enough to replenish. And that's where the power of this type of analytic approach to give you informed data to make business decisions becomes so powerful. So now we know which colors are most prevalent and popular in spring and in fall, and our yoga collection, our athleisure collection operates in its own little world. Our cashmere is highly seasonal and trend. So to overlay both of those, Brendan, I don't know if you recall working with us about 2 years ago, the forecast called for us to order, I'll never forget the number, 2,300 of one color cashmere beanie. The most we'd order was 800. We'd gone out of stock the previous 2 years before we even hit January. And, you talked me through, we ordered them, and we still went out of stock because I didn't order the second PO when the system told me that we should have. But that we ordered 3 times more than we'd ever ordered. And now that we trust the software and we've learned from the process, it's amazing how much more efficient our inventory turn has gotten. Before going on an 18-month trailing period, our stock order performance has stayed at around 93 to 95%. Previous to really relying on the data, we had been in the mid-80s. And that doesn't sound like that big of a deal until you dive into the numbers. At 85% stock order performance, which is give or take where we were, 50% of that, 7.3% actually of our out-of-stock SKUs were our highest volume SKUs. Now they bounced all over different products, but it was consistent. Fast forward the last 18 months, and it's been less than 1%. So it's been a dramatic change as our flow of product has gotten much better.
It's great to hear, and it's definitely something that we're proud of here at ForecastRx, and I know you mentioned it briefly, some of the pillowcases and how it is a bestseller for you. I know recently you did just come out with a new higher thread count. I think it's called 30 Mummy pillowcase. And I was just curious, how does an inventory forecasting solution allow you to successfully launch products and get those out there that way with a successful launch and really building that momentum right off the bat?
So we rely on one of the functions that had come online over the past 2 years, and that function was copy history. So we were able to take our historical data from our best-selling pillowcase and use that data to drive our initial orders for our 30 Mummy. Because we had knowledge of what our demand was going to look like using the history from another product, the launch went unbelievably well. It mirrored the anticipated demand from the history of the other product almost identically. The product started to do well, continued to do well. It's now one of our best revenue generators, and we never went out of stock on the most important SKUs at all during the growth of that product.
It's really great. And so we actually have a question come in from Dan, and I'm going to toss this one over to Brendan. And so he just asked, what do you guys consider seasonality? So
how we are able to take into account seasonality comes into the forecasting models that we're using. Our end product, in terms of the forecast, the demand forecast that we project for each item that you have, is really a combination. It's a hybrid model based on a bunch of different proven time series models. So what a time series model is basically we'll look at data points, which we're using sales in this scenario, over a period of time. A lot of those different models are able to inherently account for seasonality. So a particular demand jump during a specified range in that data. So for example, cashmere is a great one that Craig has here. Every December, every November, December, January, February, probably, there's an appreciable jump. So we can see that we need 2 occurrences of that season to understand that it's not an anomaly. We need to know that that's a repeated pattern. And once we have 2 occurrences of it, we can predict what's going to happen with that in the future.
So, Brett, if I could jump in, I think Dan is probably an Amazon seller. So it really doesn't matter what product you sell and what the season is, right? I mean, there's more buyers around the Christmas selling season, so everyone, I'm sure, does better. But the software also now picks up Prime Day. We also have Mother Day spikes because some of our products are highly giftable, and it picks up that as a season. It picks up positive and negative trends, but that doesn't discount the order volume that the system recognizes you need to have based on your lead time to have product grounded and in stock at Amazon FBA to capture whatever the season is that you're predicting for. So whether it be Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Prime Day, Christmas, Black Friday, Cosmic Tuesday, whatever it is, our experience with the software is it picks up everything.
Right. And the way we're doing that is by looking at previous demand. So what's great is being able to, now that we know that season's there, we could, anyone can just look at a graph like this one here and see like, all right, well, we're coming up on a demand spike. But the accuracy within, that season, right? So am I going to sell, I know that increase in sales is coming up, but am I going to sell more than last year? Am I going to sell less than last year? So what we do for that is we'll look at, what are the trends that occurred prior to this season in previous years? Does it look closer to the one from 2 years ago? Does it look closer to the one from last year? Does it look, something that happened in a different part of the year? The algorithms and the models that we're using, especially now on the machine learning side, can identify those small trends and help to predict what's going to happen even in a known season. So hopefully we didn't get too much into the weeds on that one, but that's a kind of a basic look of how the models do that.
But what's important about part of the answer, even though you get into the weeds, which I love living in the weeds, right? I've read all the books about the predictive analytics and things, and you can't do that without the power of a system that's been developed. You can't build that yourself. And Amazon's own back end is really flat file driven. It's like even their lost sales analysis. okay, you sold 52 in the previous 30 days, you're out of stock, you would have sold 52. So it's not an adequate solution. We've tried. Matter of fact, we run the ForecastRx solution alongside of the data I collect from the Amazon. I download those reports in 7-day increments and build data tables, and it's woefully inadequate. So, the back end of a multivariate process and using all of those models to identify the one that's going to be most accurate is incredibly powerful, and it's proven that way for us.
That's great. And just to what you mentioned in terms of they're difficult to build these types of models on your own is, if you have a background in time series forecasting or data analysis, you can get kind of close. I mean, maybe it won't be specific to the inventory side, but what's difficult is to generalize those models across all different types of items. So that's what we've been able to do, a little bit of the secret sauce of ForecastRx there. But again, if you're able to, the basic idea here is being able to know, or at least have a good idea of what's going to happen in the future. We have our way of doing that, but that's, a big piece of the puzzle, obviously.
There's a couple, sorry to interrupt, there's a couple things that have happened in the recent past in Amazon that have made the power or the usefulness of a program like ForecastRx even more important. The new iterations to the A9 algorithm now take into account stock order performance in your listing relevancy, so that the Amazon now pushes listings that are bouncing in and out of stock down because they want to favor the customer experience and not have products pushed to the top that have a high propensity to run out of stock. So, from a profitability standpoint, the need to have a solution that does what ForecastRx does has never been greater.
That's great, and I'm just noticing we're having a couple more questions coming.
We do have a couple questions. I was letting you guys finish out that great conversation we were having there. And so the first one that came in from Richard is, how do you account for anomalies in one-off spikes? So
there's a couple different ways, and again, it is kind of built into the models there. One of the models we use isn't a secret, was something called ARIMA, which is like an autoregressive integrated moving average. The way to kind of look at that is that we'll look at all of the data that we've been given in a time series. So if you have a year of sales data, right, you have 12 data points there, on a monthly period there. So we'll have 12 months of data. If one of those is outside of a norm there, it'll be discounted. And again, we weight the more recent past more heavily than the more distant past. So that capability is built into the models that we're using. However, inside of ForecastRx, we also have another way of doing that in modifying sales history. So for example, if you have 3 months of data, that's a much smaller pool for us to look at. So again, we don't know which of those, if you're given 3 numbers, you don't know which one's the anomaly and which one's the norm, unless 2 points are the exact same and one's drastically different. So what we allow the user to do is go in and actually edit their own sales history there to adjust for that. Most of the time for us, it's an out-of-stock period that happened before the customer started using ForecastRx. So you're able to go in and adjust that month to be within the range of the other ones, so it doesn't really throw off the statistics there. And I just noticed that there's another question regarding.
So we had Dan with a follow-up question when you guys were talking earlier and explaining the answer to what do we consider seasonality. And so to build on that, we have so you can predict seasonality once a product's being sold for 2 seasons, or is it closer to 3 seasons?
So the ideal scenario for us would be 25 months of data, where we have 2 occurrences of a season, we have 2 complete forecasting periods, and then we also have that last point of being the direction of where the future is moving in.
If I could pause you for 1 sec, because I know you're going to give a really technical answer, which I have no idea how to, but what I can say is from the experience of using this system, it would make sense that you can't flip a coin twice and understand if it came up heads both times, it's going to come up heads forever. But even before the system has 25 data points, which we have so much data in the system, I forget, how important it is at the beginning, but to get on board even at 12 and 13 months, it still picks up trends. While it can't recognize seasons yet, it's still going to pick up trends. So on an individual SKU or child variant level, you can see really granular growth trends until you accumulate enough data for the seasonality to become apparent. But for most of us that run our businesses, we know some seasons are coming. I just couldn't do it accurately enough until I got 25 months with Cashmere, because I couldn't believe the peaks were going to be as high as they were.
Yeah, that's a great analogy to bring into play here. So it would be 2 occurrences of a season. The models will naturally be able to anticipate them again moving forward. But we also do have a feature, the backfill functionality of our product. If you do have one, if you have, let's say you have 12 months of data and it's an extremely seasonal item where it's only 1 month of demand, and you know that that's going to be relatively consistent over, moving into the future, you can force the models yourself. We recommend consulting with probably myself or Parker, probably one of the people on the data side within ForecastRx to help it's a good product fit to use this feature on. But what it will allow you to do is it will force the models to recognize seasonality with less than 2 occurrences. It's not the most, from a statistician's point of view, we don't love manipulating data. We like just letting it be what it is and using that. But there's also the realistic, business running side. It's like, okay, I know that I'm only selling this this Halloween costume in the month of October, maybe at the end of September, and we know that this is probably going to be what's going to happen moving forward. So again, you can use that functionality there. So with only 12 months of data, you can get a realistic backfilled approach on that, and then we'll still take into account the trends that then lead up to that season. But again, having the natural data is certainly is preferable, but we can work with that. And also, as the more real data accrues, we push out the fabricated data backward. So eventually, we're using all real data on those items as well.
Right. And building on that a little bit, we only recommend using backfill if your first year of data is good data. We don't want you to use backfill if you're backfilling with data that we're going to pick up seasons that you don't necessarily want to have in there. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And another question, they keep coming in, which is awesome. I appreciate it. And so from Dijon, we have, how do you take stockouts into account when forecasting? I know we briefly covered it a little bit, but we'll just go.
I think from a practical, I can handle this one pretty easily. As you're growing, the function inside Amazon that does the flat file out of stock period, I download that report monthly. I still do it, and then I track by individual SKU what products I would have sold, and I backfill the data so that I don't have months of zero. The danger of any consistent period of depressed sales is that until you get a ton of data, the system actually recognizes it as something that's going to be repetitive. So if you go out of stock, let's say on the 15th of August, and you don't come back into stock until the 15th of October, you've really affected 3 data points. So you do need to adjust for that manually at the start because you just don't have enough data. But I'm sure you're tracking that now, like I was, and continue to do, so that you can enter relevant data so that it doesn't skew your forecasts. I think I answered that.
Yeah.
I think that sounded pretty good.
1 for 1.
Yep.
Oh, and Brendan, you have no future in politics if you're not willing to manipulate data. Just want to get that out there.
Too honest for politics, I guess.
But you must have been voting recently.
Yesterday.
And so, thank you, Craig. But we have even another question here. What is your typical customer volume? And so it's actually our customers range. It's a very, very, very wide range. We have customers with over 100,000 SKUs. We have customers down to around 10. And so it's really the demand portion that's the crucially important part in our system. The SKUs we'll be able to help you out, and we'll be able to forecast the number of SKUs you want forecasted for. But the demand is really the crucial part, and that also ranges down from very little demand, which is typically isn't a great thing, which we can work with, but we go up into the millions of demand over the course of 4 years. People that sell high volume, I know Fisher's Finery is getting close to that number. with some of your smaller, less expensive products selling very, very high quantities in very, very seasonal times too. So you're selling maybe 5,001 product, and it's primarily during a 3-month stretch of time. So
yeah, our top selling single SKU is in the 50,000 unit range on an annual basis. So yeah, but we go all the way from that product, which I wish I could replicate many times over, all the way down to stuff that might sell, 100 in a season, like a very expensive cashmere shawl. And the forecast is just is valid on that. If you don't mind, I can use that to segue into something that really helps us. I don't know how many sellers it's going to pertain to, but since we design, manufacture, and import our own products, and we're at the size now where I can purchase raw materials in the spot market and try to save money from a construction or a cut and sew standpoint on the manufacturing side, being able to use this product to help with MOQ breaks has been really powerful. Since I don't recall exactly, I'm getting old, when the product was upgraded to push the forecast out to about 12 months.
Yep, 12 months would have been about probably 2 years ago.
So I can, what that allowed us to do, we'll talk about this year, for our cashmere products, because we can't help the goats grow hair any faster, we have to order the color, we have to dye the yarn back in June to get ready for the Christmas selling season, the fall, winter season. And so being able to forecast far enough out into the future has allowed me, since we share colors across multiple products, not only in our cashmere, but in our silk, in our bamboo viscose products, it's helped me manage the purchasing of the fabric or raw material and manage the cut and sew portion, so that we've decreased our lead time because I have the raw material. In cashmere, sometimes you just can't get it. If you're trying to reorder in January, the big yarn houses didn't dye that color, you have no chance. But even in some of our standard products, like women's athleisure, we're able to produce in much larger quantities and push our MOQ down. So our actual cost of procurement in the last 18 months has dropped, even with some of the issues with the exchange rates and things. And that's because deploying the full suite of data that's available in Forecast RX has allowed us to hit higher MOQ breakpoints.
Thank you for bringing up the specific feature. MOQ is definitely one that a lot of people benefit from, and a lot of customers benefit from, especially Amazon sellers. And that kind of leads me into one other feature that we have that I know a lot of people desperately need and love about the software and use, whether it's in Excel or whether it's in another inventory forecasting solution. It's one of those things that you'll find across the board. Just it's displayed in different ways, and I'm going to kick this one over to Brendan in a minute. But so there's a service level feature in Forecast RX that corresponds to the amount of safety stock we're going to recommend, and that allows the seller to really value their products and what they want to stay in stock with more often, what isn't necessarily as important to your bottom line. Everybody has those products. Like you ideally treat all your products equally and make sure everything's in stock. But you know what? Sometimes it's just not possible. You need to free up some of that valuable capital for other parts of your business, and you need to stay in stock in those things that are going to make you the revenue at the end of the year. And so, Brennan, in statistics, it's called a confidence interval. Can you just get into some of the details with our safety stock recommendations and how crucial a role the service level plays in those recommendations?
Definitely. So it kind of starts, you kind of brought this up. It starts with the basic idea of economics there, in terms of you have finite resources, basically allocating them in the optimal manner. So our approach to that was creating a service level with inside of Forecast RX. And again, so it starts with a confidence interval that you specify. It's between 50%, which is going to give you 0 additional safety stock and what our sales projection is, all the way up to 99%, which it completely depends on the individual item, how much additional inventory we're going to recommend ordering. That's going to totally depend. It can go all the way up to
for a second?
1,000.
So that technically, right, that's what it does on a really detailed level, the formula. And I can tell you from a practical level in what we do to run our business, what it's allowed me to do over time is the fastest selling child SKU of a parent, we push the confidence interval, I believe it's 99. And what that really does is say that the odds that you run out of stock drop to near zero.
Yeah, it's going to be 1%.
Yeah, so you have safety stock or extra product order. Of the slower selling child variants, we drop those to 50, which I believe is a flat line. So you're probably going to run out of stock periodically. And that's what happens. We bounce in and out of stock. But what it does is we invest our capital and we have our longest day supply into the fastest turning products, which flip over to Amazon now. The A9 changes in the algorithm now reward you for being in stock and having sufficient 30-day quantities. So you've got the inventory you need at the time you need it and the quantities you need it to maintain your listing relevancy. Because if you have 10 children of a parent SKU, 6 of them could go out of stock, and that would have less effect on the listing than 1 or 2 of the top 2 sellers going out of stock. And that's where that confidence level or service level really manifests itself from a practical manner in our business every day.
Yeah, that's certainly why we designed it that way, to be able to be variable, not just I want a high degree of certainty or a medium degree, or I just want my basic sales forecast to determine my ordering. And again, and what's also great about the way that we do service level is that it's all product specific, not only for the reason that Craig mentioned, but also because if an item has very straight line, like flat demand, not much variance, the safety stock is going to be much lower because we have a higher degree of confidence that the sales are going to be within a certain area. As items start to have like very large demand fluctuations, the safety stock level for that is going to be a little bit higher just due to the natural uncertainty there. And that's important to remember in any forecasting, really, and demand planning, is being able to account for that without going too overboard and ordering 3 times as many as you're probably going to sell. So the combination of being able to prioritize child variants of SKUs and being able to remain in stock the majority of the time on all of your SKUs.
Sure, and lead time is specific by manufacturer. So if I've got stock fabric at our cut and sew factory that does our women's apparel line, and I can be from date of PO issuance to in Amazon FBA in 75 days, I set that lead time at 75 days. So, and I issue POs monthly. So the system's calculating demand, knowing the demand, projecting demand, calculating what I need to order based on 105 days to get it live for sale. And since that varies by every one of my manufacturers, I'm able to do that specifically for each product line.
Definitely. Yeah. And of course, now we're talking about varying lead times and items like that. We could tie back the whole service level conversation as well with seasonality. For the items that are extremely seasonal, even if you have a high service level on that item, the safety stock recommendations are still going to be less in the off season, because we know that season's upcoming. You may have a high level of safety stock in your selling season, but on the off season, it's going to drop back down even if you don't even change your service level on the item itself. So the models are smart enough to notice that. I also noticed that we had another question. I think it was about forecasting with no demand.
Yep. So Richard, on a follow-up question, we do have 15 minutes left, so we'll start getting into some of these. I know we have a couple more topics we want to discuss as well, but maybe you said maybe you'll be getting to this, but what about new products and no demand history for forecasting? Will ForecastRx apply general seasonality to new SKUs, or how does that work?
So just how we look at it, and then I'll toss this over to Craig too to explain how he forecasts for new items using ForecastRx. We don't apply generalized seasonality to items because there are so many variables that are just outside of our control there. If we don't know about a particular item, it's too difficult to do that reliably. There's really a lot more chance of doing more harm than good by doing that, at least in our testing and our experience that way. So the way that we kind of worked around that was by introducing like a copy history functionality, which I know Craig has used, and we did mention a little bit earlier. We just kind of touched on it, but we can get into a little more detail there. How you can take an item that you already have that may have similar demand or a similar demand pattern and copy that history over to your new item, and then we'll use that to create the general pattern of demand. And then as new sales come in for your just released item, we'll start using that data as well and kind of mix the two together on the back end for you. That's kind of the technical way of how it works. And
Richard, if your products, maybe you could pop in and just let us know, are you talking about a product that you've never sold before and you're jumping into a brand new market, or it's a product that's going to run adjacent to something you're familiar with selling already? If it's brand new, totally new category, which we do, we go into totally new categories often, and we've had some wonderful successes, and we've got warehouses full of some stuff that never sold. I can't believe I just admitted that, but depending on the MOQ, and if you're manufacturing yourself or buying from a distributor, you need to set your first order to whatever level it is. Recognizing sales velocity early on, the first PO you issue after the initial listing goes live, or you've already bought the first stuff, is not really going to be forecastable under any modeling because it's brand new. But as the system, I think it's critically important, and it's proven that way for us, to get a system like ForecastRx up and running, to get the data in. And I believe there's a discounted onboarding or discounted membership fee or monthly subscription fee if you're brand new, because the minute you flip over 13 months, the data, again, doesn't pick up seasonality, but it's showing you're trending on an individual SKU basis. And then as you get to the 25th month level, the data becomes unbelievably powerful. It continues to get better from there. So it does a great job, but it can't pick up seasonality, right? Because the season hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. And so Richard did actually just respond and said, generally similar to existing, occasionally new categories, but we typically have an estimate on annual demand based on similar items.
Yeah, that's what we do, right? So a lot of coming into this Q3, Q4, the fall, winter, and spring season where cashmere really takes off, we're introducing a brand new line. And so what we did is we used the copy history function from existing products into the new products to gauge what the demand is going to look like actually on a granular level of color, because the system tracks it by individual SKU, which translates back to an individual product. We do our launches now with real data versus just throwing a dartboard at it and guessing. And it allows me to time out my production so that I can have about 30% of an order hit pre-Q3 to get going. Second larger piece of a big seasonal product will hit closer to peak demand, which is Thanksgiving, in enough time to get it to Amazon. And then the last slug would be in January to get ready for the end of winter spring sales. So it's helped even our cash flow as well as provide real data for new product launches, because we're able to use that copy history from functionality that's very powerful.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway here as well is, even if you're not using ForecastRx necessarily, is if you have been selling items for some time, you have a wealth of data to draw on anyway, even for your own projections. So if you have data from a similar item, it's important to use that. I mean, it sounds like common sense, but a lot of people, they'll have something similar. Maybe it's even not in the same category, but it's the same seasonal demand pattern, and you see the way or complement item to another one that you already have. It's important to bring that data in for your new product forecast, because it can really help you. And obviously we have our way of doing it with our copy history functionality, but even if you're just using Excel for now, not ready to jump up to a full inventory forecasting platform like ForecastRx, you could still use that and extrapolate some information from it, where it can really help you. You don't need to be feeding it into the best, forecasting algorithms and models like we do. You can still use, you can still use some of the growth trends that you've observed on, previously launched items, and it can at least get you. It's better than, like you said, just throwing darts in the dark. So
absolutely, and generally, we definitely recommend not taking a shot in the dark, and you definitely want to use your history as whatever you can. Little human interventions sometimes necessary when using any software, just because you know more about your products than the algorithms are gonna, especially off the bat. And so we have a couple more questions. We have 15 minutes left for the webinar, and I just have a couple more things that I know we sent out to everyone, and was one of the reasons that people are here. And so I want to get into how an inventory forecasting solution can ultimately save you time and money in the long run, and how I know that the solutions range from $50 to thousands of dollars, depending on what ERP you want to integrate, what company size you have, and generally just the degree of forecasting you're looking for. But commonly across the board is one thing, is that you're going to end up making more money, which is going to obviously pay for the subscription. And I want to toss that off to Craig first, and then Brendan too, and just talk about how keeping those accurate inventory quantities, one, saves you the time for partially automating the process. Like we mentioned, those new products are definitely going to need a little bit more time, but once those get going, it is a relatively automated process. And so we'll just let you start with in how it saved you time and money using not only Forecaster X, but trying other inventory forecasting solutions as well.
Yeah, that's a great question, Parker. So it touches on so many different parts of our e-commerce platform. If you start on the revenue side, you're talking about having your listings in stock at the in appropriate quantities, so that your listing stays live. And it's never been more important, as we've talked about the changes to the A9 algorithm. But it touches everything from cash flow. So having product that's longer than 9 months sitting in a warehouse is a problem, right? You're tying up capital all over the place. So we've seen dramatic changes in improved cash flow, profitability, because we have the products that are the fastest turning and the biggest quantities, and the slower turning ones without as much capital tied up. From a time saving standpoint, it's me, when I issue POs now, I'm down to being able to do all of them for our 9 manufacturers in 2 days, where before it was literally a weekly task, taking up anywhere from 3 to 8 hours a week, getting reports updated, making sure I had my information to then get to the end of the month to scramble and try to get POs issued. So the time savings has been remarkable, which has helped us grow because I can free up resources to do other things. And then with product introductions, it's proven so valuable that we've been able to grow faster and in a more pinpointed way of even knowing what colors, predicting seasons, order quantities, MOQs, driving costs down, because I already know what I'm going to, the system tells me what I'm going to sell over the next 9 months. So even on the slower moving SKUs, I'm not as apprehensive to go a little long in inventory if it means I'm going to hit a price discount on my total order volume. So our profitability's increased because we've driven our cost of production down. Our days of stock inventory has dropped, and our in-stock level has never been higher. So I think any business owner or someone who runs a business would say that's a win-win-win.
Right, and that's exactly it. Now we'll kick it over to Brendan to kind of give his thoughts and how he's kind of helped the people optimize their forecast and optimize even when they just started, just getting going, and how that's helped save people you've worked with time and money.
Well, I'd say that really where it's the most apparent in terms of saving time is either on, well, obviously it gets to be an exponential time savings as you go into the more items someone has. Even if I were to go in and use the same models that we're using inside of Forecast RX and go into the statistical package, like the program, and input the numbers, even though those models take a short time to run, I would still need to go in and basically, it would take forever to put in 1,000 different items, all those different time series there. The fact that it's done every night for you automatically without you needing to do anything with Forecast RX, you have, servers and computers taking care of all of that for you. It just is taking your results. I know Craig is very good at doing this, is taking our outputs and then applying them to make sure that you're getting the best purchasing, results for you. I know that you take our data a lot out of the system, take our forecasts, and and use that to make decisions even outside of direct ordering for replenishment.
Right. So, we've been, again, embracing the program and working with it for long enough that I trust the data. I trust the output. So inside the system, for those who haven't used it, the dashboard is really intuitive. I know another team member, Ryan, was involved with redoing the dashboard, and this last iteration has been wonderful. So you can look at what the system tells you it's recommending that you purchase, which is wonderful. It really is. It tells you what you have in stock, if you've got your accurate inventory quantities in there, what forecasted demand is going to be, and what you should order to make sure you don't go out of stock based on your lead time. And then it even tells you what quantity based on your MOQs. So that's great. I tend not to use that functionality because of the number of SKUs and the size of the number of products I need to produce to hit MOQ. So I go into a custom field, I download by either manufacturer, mostly by parent product. And even if the system says I have enough stock to go through the entire lead time, which includes PO issuance date to ground it in Amazon to be available for sale, it might say I don't need 11, I'm negative 11. You've got more than you need to sell for that period. But if I've got to hit an MOQ based on fabric of color, for example, I might look in some of the products that use that same fabric, even if it's a negative order quantity, to maybe order 50, knowing that it's more than I need, but it benefits me because I order the smaller quantities and the stuff that I really don't have to have, but I'm able to hit the big deductions in MOQ. So that filtering system is proven invaluable for me. I filter, download onto a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and then manipulate my order from there. And then we use QuickBooks Enterprise. For anyone who's laughing, please stop. I just can't justify the huge expense to move to a more robust ERP at this point. We're pretty happy with where we are. And because we use ForecastRx, we didn't need to spend a fortune integrating any of the plug-and-play applications to the big ERP systems, which those applications cost a fortune in comparison to this product.
Right, and just tying that all back into the time and money, and just generally the people we talk to, the people we work with, and just e-commerce businesses and Amazon sellers in general don't have huge teams, and so it's generally a small amount of people running the company, doing the marketing, doing all the campaigns, running the inventory processes, and from everything that is involved in the business, and just for being able to free up a little bit of time to dedicate that to other aspects and other areas to help the business grow has definitely been something that people have come back to us with and been thankful for. And so we have about 5 minutes left. I want to get into some of the questions that have been submitted throughout the webinar. And so we have one from Nathan, and he asked, what's default if you don't specify a service level?
We default it to 85. I kind of chose that for the default value because you're not going to be like too crazily overstocked in most situations, and you're not going to be woefully understocked in others. That's the default. However, that's extremely easy to change. You can also get into a vendor-specific service level as well. And if you really want to be granular, like I know Craig is, going on individual items, you can do that as well. And obviously, the level of priority goes from item to vendor to the company default level.
If I could interject 1 second to Nathan's question. Even if you set the default high, the system's going to tell you to order the maximum amount to guarantee you don't go out of stock for the first few orders. As that quantity of stock builds, it by nature slows down your future orders because you already have the stock, even given the high service level. So your orders will naturally drop if your demand doesn't match. And where it's proven powerful for us using the 85 default is that accumulated inventory now on the ground gets ready for our ramp up of the Christmas selling season and gives us enough time to get that big order in if a product explodes. So it's really proven incredibly valuable because it recognizes lead times as well as the service level.
And great point. Just to also go on that, we do the other parameters as well, like MOQ, lead time. Those are also specifiable inside of ForecastRx on the item vendor and company level. And even if you're not using Forecast RX, it's important to really start honing in on those individual item lead times, because we see it all the time where someone will, it's their first time ordering an item, and you'll think that it's something. I know Craig's had this happen to him where it's like you think that it's going to be 75 days, and it ends up being, one time it's 85 days, another time it's 65 days. Keeping track of that and just keeping track of your lead times on an item level or on a vendor level, so you can more accurately specify what your specific lead time is, can really do a lot in reducing your out-of-stock periods, at least in what I've seen, to be able to lock that down.
Absolutely, it's immensely important. And so we have a question here from Ryan that says, how does an inventory forecasting solution help with, like you mentioned, third-party warehouses or warehouses outside of actually being at Amazon?
So that's a great question. So we reconcile our inventory on a continual basis, bringing it to bringing it to really accurate quantities monthly. And the reason we do it monthly is because I do POs monthly. So whether the product is in transit, in a container coming across the ocean, whether it's in one of our 3 warehouses in the US or at Amazon FBA, it all rolls up into a single quantity to look at total stock level versus projected demand to determine what reorder point or what reorder quantities we should be looking to purchase. So the system allows for the combination of those inventories to be aggregated to take a single source look, because it all comes down to what number of these do you have. It doesn't matter necessarily where they are.
Right.
How many do you have? Is that enough? Should you reorder more?
Right.
Yeah, I think that gets into the important point as well of replenishment directly to Amazon FBA versus reordering on the whole.
I'm not sure how many sellers use the ability to ship directly to FBA. It's a catch-22, right? Especially now with that new 180-day charge for inventory, which is catastrophically expensive if you're long at Amazon. But we do continually break our shipments down to some portion going directly to FBA and the residual going to our warehouses. But I can't justify a model that we would ship 100% to Amazon. The long-term storage fees would be catastrophic. But the product, since we set at our replenishment at levels that we set it at, we're continuing on a 90-day roll, and it's been very effective for us. There are times where there's a spike in demand, or we take a large wholesale order. I think a gentleman had asked a question about what about an anomaly. We have those, especially as a hybrid seller with vendor and seller central. And so we're able to see those right away and react quickly. So when we see those right away, since I check our Forecast RX dashboard weekly and track it, there are times I'll issue a PO out of my normal routine because we've had a bump in demand, and I know I'm going to run short.
Perfect, thank you. Now we are running out of time here. We apologize. But so one more question that we had come in from James is, with 2,500 SKUs, how much effort would it be to bring in sales history to get started using QuickBooks Enterprise?
Oh, so using QuickBooks. That's a pretty simple process as well. Amazon's going to be pretty similar. Also, with QuickBooks, we just use QuickBooks for Enterprise. We're using Web Connector. So you basically just register a company on my.forecastrx.com, download the Web Connector, install it in QuickBooks Enterprise, and begin a sync. That initial sync with 2,500 items or so, it depends how much demand there is. That could take maybe an hour or two. We have one of our QuickBooks people in the room as well. He can tell me maybe more accurately about how long that would take on that initial sync. The subsequent syncs take maybe a couple minutes if you're syncing daily. So it's a pretty hands-off process there. You're just installing the Web Connector and having it run.
Yeah,
you have a Web Connector company as well.
We sync through QuickBooks. So, the first thing I can't imagine, our company files a 1.2 gig, so it would be a lot of data to bring in, but it's pretty seamless. And then I know the people that operate in the background of Forecast RX Ryan and working with Brendan and Parker help you get all your data set up, make sure that it's clean and that whatever needs to be adjusted gets handled, and so you can take a look at things on the backside, make sure your inventory counts are matching and your sales flow is accurate. But it's seamless with that web connector. It auto populates overnight.
Yep, and you're synced on both QuickBooks and Amazon directly.
Yeah,
so you have both.
Yeah.
So you have the Amazon side of your company really focusing on the Amazon integration and the QuickBooks on the QuickBooks side as well, so you can get in your Shopify and other information that way. It's another benefit of QuickBooks. So.
Yep. And that appears to be all the questions that we have submitted throughout the webinar. We covered most of the material that we wanted to cover, and we've run into the hour time limit here. And we just want to say thank you everyone for attending and coming to the ForecastRx webinar for Amazon sellers. Thank you, Craig, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of valuable information.
I'm going to throw a commercial out there for ForecastRx since you guys are too modest and humble. I can tell you from running our company going on 5 years now and getting to the 10 million revenue mark that it is just not possible to grow your business efficiently and effectively without a forecasting tool. I know I'm close to this product and these guys because we've been involved for so long, but without this type of solution at this modest level of investment based on all of the applications we all use that are $99, $199, whatever they are, whether it's ShipStation, ShipWorks, whatever the program is, in my opinion, living with data the way I do, it's foolhardy to try to grow a business without this type of solution. And if you're an Amazon seller and or use QuickBooks, this solution, and I looked at 7 or 8 of them before we jumped on with this one, it's outstanding, and it's silly not to dip your toe in the water and give it a shot.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah.
And thank you, Brendan, as well. Greatly appreciated sharing some of your knowledge.
Can I get a free shirt for that?
Yeah, we can get you one.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And so the webinar will be on our website for anybody that wants to maybe watch it again, specific parts, or take another peek. It'll be on the website. We do have another webinar coming up in September. We are going to figure out the specifics on that, the date, the time, and we will be sending out emails to everybody when we do iron that out. And so anybody that's attending that has been with ForecastRx before or trialed the software, use the software, we'll make sure we reach out. And then also people who potentially won't get those emails, feel free to email sales@forecastrx.com, and we'll make sure to get you the details for our next webinar coming up in September relatively soon. So thank you again, everyone, and that's it for today.
Also, if you have any additional questions that maybe you didn't ask here, feel free to email sales@forecastrx.com as well. We'll get back to you as soon as possible on those.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.